Hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Spotlight, brought to you by Jones Ford Buick GMC, your hometown dealer for more than 50 years. I am Brian Wright, and I am with Maria Vasquez, and we are getting into week 10. So we've got this week and then one more week of the regular season left, and then it's time for state playoffs. So we are talking this week about our game of the week is going to be Santan Foothills going on the road to Coolidge. And Santan Foothills had a valiant effort last week against Florence, but came up a little bit short. And the SaberCats are 2-6 on the year, whereas Coolidge is 7-1. And Maria, how do you see this matchup shaping up?
Well, despite Santan Foothill's struggles on the field, they have a pretty good defense. They have Jacoby Wilson, Ethan Hastings, and Wesley Durano. There's some other big defensive stoppers for the SaberCats, which, you wouldn't really hear about given how lopsided some of their scores have been.
Yeah, when I look at the SaberCats' defensive numbers, they have been able to get some pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But when you look at the Coolidge offense, I mean, they want to run the ball. Valentine Rodriguez, their quarterback, can hurt you either way. But the Bears' offense is primarily a running offense, and the challenge for the SaberCats is going to be trying to stop them on the ground. Both Valentine Rodriguez with his 578 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, and Greg Rodriguez, who already has 872 yards and 11 touchdowns. So I think that's going to be the challenge for Santan Foothills on defense. Now, Maria, when you look at Santan Foothills on offense, obviously they have one guy who really runs the show for them.
Yeah, Amari Bailey, he's just their go-to guy pretty much. Brett Lincoln, the quarterback, he has had a couple of good games, but it hasn't been very consistent from the SaberCat offense at all this season.
Yeah, right now it's basically a one-man show for Santan Foothills. If they don't get Amari Bailey going, that they really don't have much else they can lean on. But Bailey does have 848 yards, 14 touchdowns. He's having a nice season. Maria mentioned Brett Lincoln. Now, he's just a sophomore. So I think that the SaberCats are really looking to him, into the future. I think they have high hopes for what he can do in the future. But as she mentioned right now, there's not a whole lot of production from the passing game. And when I look at the Bears, they've been really good on defense. And I think a guy who doesn't maybe get talked about enough is linebacker Malachi Rodriguez. He has a sack and a half. He's got an interception. He has 5 fumble recoveries, and he's also forced 3 fumbles. So he's been a really disruptive player for the Bears, and I think he's going to be somebody that Santan Foothills has to watch out for in this game. And Maria, any final thoughts on this game?
Well, along with Malachi Rodriguez, the Bears also have Carlos Valencia and Angelo Palacios, and each of those guys have 5 sacks each, which, is going to be key to either slowing down Mari Bailey, or if Santan Foothills decides to go with its passing game, they can put some pressure on Brett Lincoln.
Okay, that does it for our breakdown of the game of the week, and enjoy the game on Friday night. Okay, now it's time to talk about our Week 10 picks. And right now, Maria and I are pretty much dead even. She is 55-17 on the year. I have one more victory at 56-17. So let's get to it, and I'm going to start with our game of the week, which is Santan Foothills at Coolidge. And I just think that the Bears have too much for the SaberCats right now, who are pretty one-dimensional. And the Bears, are deep on offense and on defense, and I see Coolidge getting a pretty easy win here.
I'm also taking the Bears. Santan Foothills, their only offense right now is Amari Bailey, and so far during the season, he has one good game and one off game. Last week was his good game against Florence, so going up against the Bears defense, I think, this isn't going to be one of his best games, so I'm taking Coolidge. Next, we have Casa Grande heading to Tucson Saguaro, and I will be taking Saguaro in this game. I think that they have 3 running backs who do a really great job of rushing the ball, and their only 2 losses so far this year have been to 2 of the top 3 teams in the conference against South Point Catholic and CDO.
Yeah, I am also going to take Saguaro in this matchup. However, I think it's going to be a really close game. These two teams, when they got together last year, it went right down to the wire. Saguaro had to score a late touchdown to escape with a win, and that was against an undermanned Union team that had some injuries. And so I think Union is a better team this year. I think Saguaro is probably also a better team this year. So I could really see this game going down to the wire again. But I looked at Casagrande's win last week over Catalina Foothills, and although it was a good win, they had some things that were a little bit sloppy that they need to clean up, and they're definitely going to need to do that if they're going to beat Saguaro. But I'm going to take Saguaro in a close game. Next, we have Vista Grande going on the road to Oro Valley Canyon del Oro, and CDO is one of the top teams in 4A. And at this point, it hasn't really mattered much who Vista Grande is playing. They are not competitive right now. And it's been kind of the same problems for the Spartans all year long, is that they can't run the football, and they've had trouble scoring in the red zone, and they've also had missed assignments on defense, and they haven't tackled very well. And those things haven't really changed throughout the year, and I don't see them changing at this point either. And I think CDO is going to cruise in this game.
I'm also taking CDO. Right now, they're one of the top three ranked teams in the 4A conference. They're just sitting outside the open division and going up against winless Vista Grande. I think it's also going to be an easy win. Next, we have Maricopa traveling to Queen Creek Castile. And talk about other teams that have been struggling lately. Maricopa is one of them. And looking at Castile, they've always been an offensive powerhouse. And Dane Christensen has over 1,600 passing yards and a 70% completion rate.
And I am going to be covering that game, so I do not have a pick. Next game is Poston Butte hosting Phoenix Arcadia, and I must be nuts because I am going to continue to pick the Broncos, even though they have lost 3 straight really close games, and I see this game against Arcadia being a very close game too. It's probably going to be another one-possession game, but I'm going to stick with the Broncos because I don't think this team is giving up. I think that behind Coach Dane Thompson, they are going to take the positives away that they can take from those close losses. And they have developed what's probably one of the best running games in the state right now with Zion Burns, their feature back, and then you got quarterback Gavin Lloyd and running back Khalil Cooper. All these guys can really run the football, and it makes it very hard for opposing defenses to stop them. So I'm going to pick the Broncos.
And I'm taking Arcadia. Trey Brown already has 10 sacks and 62 tackles, and offensively you have Caden Beller, who has 1,781 passing yards and 20 touchdowns. Next, we have Florence hosting ALA Queen Creek. And although the Gophers finally did get a win last week, they're going against a top opponent who they have never beat so far since ALA Queen Creek has pretty much existed in the AIA.
Yeah, ALA Queen Creek is not only the best team in the 3A Central, they're the best 3A team in the state right now. The top 2 teams are ALA Queen Creek and Benjamin Franklin, and those 2 teams got together last week, and ALA Queen Creek came away with the victory. So they are clearly the class of 3A right now. And, Florence, outside of last week's win, they have largely struggled this year, and the Patriots have a really great passing game and a lot of talent, so I'm going to take the Patriots in that game. Next, we have Apache Junction hosting Glendale, and this is a Glendale team that just edged Combs last week by 1 point in overtime on a blocked extra point. That was a 49-48 game, and I'm going to take the Prospectors in this game because, unlike Combs, AJ has really shown itself to have a strong defense. They're coming off 3 straight shutouts, and that's largely due to guys like defensive lineman Cody Arbogast and linebackers Ethan LeBrew and Brody Bullard. And we know that Apache Junction can also score the football. So I think that the Prospectors are going to win this game.
And I will be covering this game, so I do not get a pick. Next, we have Combs traveling to Phoenix, Washington. And Phoenix, Washington is still winless, and after Combs' close game against Glendale last week, this should be a walk in the park for them, considering their offense overtime loss last week.
Yeah, I agree with Maria. I mean, Glendale was certainly a much better opponent, and they were able to put up almost 50 points on Glendale. So, and they've really had a strong offense all year. I mean, their only issue has been getting those defensive stops, and Washington is certainly not going to challenge them in that regard. But Combs, you look at running back Joey Jensen. He had 327 yards last week, and he's been really good all year. And so has quarterback Trey Buck, who is now a senior. He's completing 68.5% of his passes. He's going to end up with over 2,000 yards passing this year. He already has 16 touchdowns. So I'm going to take the Coyotes. And our last game is ALA Ironwood going on the road to play Queen Creek Benjamin Franklin. And as I mentioned before, Ben Franklin, they lost to ALA Queen Creek, but they're kind of clearly the number 2 team in 3A right now, whereas ALA Ironwood still winless at 0-8, still trying to find that first win, but they're not going to find it against the Chargers, who have a devastating running game. They run that double wing offense, and they have multiple ball carriers coming at you from multiple angles, and that's going to be too big of a task for Ironwood.
I agree with Brian. Benjamin Franklin right now, they have 3 guys who average over 70 yards rushing per game, and these 3 guys have combined for over 20 touchdowns.
That does it for our picks. Remember to visit PinalCentral.com for all of your Pinal County football action, and we will see you next week.